Donald Trump has stormed to victory in the US presidential elections on a day that could play a decisive role in the fate of Russia's war against Ukraine. But while many Ukrainians are concerned about how a Trump victory could play out for the war in the future, here in the present, the situation on the battlefield is beginning to take a turn for the worse for Kyiv. After 2 years of brutal attritional warfare across southern and eastern Ukraine, dynamism has returned to the front line, with Russian gains coming at the fastest rate since the first months of the full-scale invasion. On November the 2nd, Commander-in-Chief Alexander Syrsky said that Ukraine was facing one of the most powerful Russian offensives since the start of the all-out war. The increasing pace of Russia's advance is evidence of how this war of attrition, that many officials and analysts in the West had called a stalemate, had, slowly but surely, been flowing in Moscow's favor. So, what brought us to this point? Is it just a tough period, or are there bigger issues at play? And what needs to be done to pull Ukraine out of this situation and regain the upper hand? My name is Francis Farrell, I'm a reporter here at the Kyiv Independent, and in this video we're going to bring you up to date with everything going on the front line, what the latest moves are, what to keep an eye out for, and what to expect over the next few months. All of our work, from videos like this to reports from the front line, is made possible by our community of members who contribute as little as the price of a cup of coffee every month. To support independent journalism and join us in this fight, please consider becoming a member by following the link up here. Thank you. I want to start by doing a sweep across the front line, covering all the hotspots where we have seen significant movement over the past few months. The most intense battles are being fought in the south of Ukrainian-controlled Donetsk Oblast, where rapid Russian gains over autumn are beginning to form a pocket around the industrial city of Kurakhove. After advancing quickly towards the key logistical hub of Pokrovsk over summer, Russian forces pivoted south in early September, cutting off a large pocket of Ukrainian-held land west of the Vovcha River with the successful capture of the city of Ukrainsk. With the fall of nearby Hirnik and Kurakhivka in the following months, as well as Russian gains immediately east of Kurakhove, fighting is now reaching the edge of the city. At the same time, the almost 2-year-long defense of Vuhledar, dubbed a fortress city by many Ukrainians, ended with its capture by Russian forces in the first days of October. Heavy losses and relentless enemy assaults forced what was left of Ukraine's 72nd Mechanized Brigade and other attached units to withdraw from the city, across fields swarming with Russian drones. Falling back after losing Vuhledar, Ukrainian lines northwest of the city have incurred successive local collapses as Russian forces push across the vast open fields towards the main highway into Kurakhove. As for Pokrovsk itself, just because Russia has turned south doesn't mean they've stopped inching towards the city. In late October, after halting Russian forces for 2 months, the city of Selydove was overrun in a couple of days. Selydove was defended by a capable, fresh brigade, the 15th National Guard. But when Russian forces advanced on the flanks, which were defended by weaker units, they cut off all the remaining roads with suicide drones and direct fire, making defending the city impossible. A lot of how these city battles play out follows a worrying pattern. In built-up urban areas that should be ideal for a defensive battle, Russian forces choose not to assault the city straight up, but first encircle it. Elsewhere in Donetsk Oblast, though, Ukraine is having more success staging costly fights in its cities. After Russia surged forward in summer in Toretsk and Niu-York, Ukraine has been holding, even occasionally counterattacking, in these two cities, which are slowly being wiped off the earth by endless Russian bombardment. The picture is more worrying further north in Chasiv Yar. Aided by high ground and the natural barrier formed by a major canal, Chasiv Yar had been a bright spot for the Ukrainian defense over summer. But after sustained pressure, countless failed assaults, and the mass use of drones complicating Ukraine's defense, Russian forces breached the canal in mid-October, both along the main highway into Bakhmut and inside the urban area of Chasiv Yar itself. If Russian forces can cement their presence on the western side of the canal and advance further, they could close the distance to the cities of Slavyansk, Kramatorsk, and Drushkivka. Further north in Kharkiv Oblast, while the defense of the area around Kharkiv itself has held strong since the initial Russian push in May, large chunks of liberated territory are under threat of a second occupation near Kupiansk. Ukraine's hold on the territory east of the Oskil River has been put under real threat by Russian advances, which have pierced through 15 kilometers of Ukrainian-held territory to reach the riverbank. Last but not least, we have Ukraine's hold of part of Kursk Oblast inside Russian territory. Here, as wildly successful as the first phase of the Ukrainian cross-border incursion in August was, the picture now is far less rosy. Ukrainian-controlled territory in Kursk has shrunk significantly as Russian forces push back, retaking multiple settlements over autumn. Kyiv has sent some of its stronger brigades to reinforce these areas, but with thousands of North Korean soldiers now joining the fight, the pressure is mounting. So why is this happening? How did we get here? Russia's advances over autumn are a sobering reminder that this war is far from a stalemate, even if the front lines don't move much for over a year. Instead, it's a war of attrition, a numbers game, and when that attrition equation starts favoring one side for too long, things start moving faster. Throughout 2024, one issue that has been consistent across the board for Ukraine on the battlefield is the lack of quality manpower. Simply put, Ukraine just doesn't have enough fit, skilled soldiers to properly man positions along hundreds of kilometers of front line. The reasons for the shortage are well documented. Over 2024, Ukraine has struggled to mobilize and properly train enough combat-capable men. The other issue is how Ukraine's newly mobilized infantry are then used. Ukraine continues to battle chronic issues with its basic training, often dominated by Soviet-era practices. On top of that, many new soldiers end up in newly formed brigades, which, without any combat experience, inevitably end up taking more losses and suffering more cases of desertion once sent into battle. On the battlefield, these problems ultimately end up compounding. Inadequate mobilization leads to not enough soldiers to replenish ranks or create enough new brigades. Meanwhile, issues with training, the selection of older, less fit men, and the sending of green brigades into intense battles, in turn leads to higher losses and the need to mobilize even more people. Over time, if they take losses that aren't being replenished for long enough, even Ukraine's strongest and most battle-hardened brigades, like the 72nd in Vuhledar, begin to quickly lose their combat effectiveness. Ukraine is working on combating the Soviet-era legacy in its draft system, but in the meantime, Kyiv continues to pay the price. Of course, as has been the case since the start of the full-scale war, none of this changes the fact that much of Russia's success continues to be due to its overwhelming numbers advantage, both in manpower, ammunition, and equipment. Leveraging these advantages, Russian forces continue to refine the practice of targeting the weak points in Ukrainian lines, manned by more poorly trained, poorly equipped, or simply more exhausted brigades. In doing so, they can advance forward in sectors with less resistance, eventually outflanking and compromising the positions held by more combat-effective brigades. Ukrainian forces are undeniably overstretched right now, and having to defend tens of kilometers of extra front line inside Russia with reserves that could be sent to prop up the Eastern Front isn't helping. Under immense pressure, Ukraine's higher command often manages this situation in a way that is controversial at best and self-destructive at worst, peeling off battalions and even companies from brigades and sending them to other sectors of the front line. What you get as a result is a disjointed command structure that seeks to constantly fight fires while overall combat effectiveness suffers. So, what can we expect going forward? At the moment, with a tough winter ahead and a Trump presidency on the horizon, the battlefield picture is gloomy at best. The big question is simply whether Ukraine can turn this trajectory around and stabilize their lines of defense. More than anything, this depends on Russia, and the biggest unknown in this war, how long Russia can continue to attack at this rate across so many fronts. As Moscow expanded its offensive operations through summer and autumn, its losses have also surged. On November the 4th, Russian personnel losses reported by Ukraine's general staff passed the 700,000 mark. Russia's own manpower resources are not endless, as Moscow's increase of sign-up bonuses and deployment of North Korean troops shows. Still, these signs of strain are yet to translate into slowing down, let alone actual culmination on the battlefield. Come next year, much of Ukraine's fate will ultimately be decided by how President-elect Trump chooses to act and whether his claim to be able to negotiate an end to Russia's war will be anything more than hot air. But in the meantime, if Kyiv hopes to be in a strong position come January the 20th, Russia's advance has to be stopped. And for that to happen, there is clearly still a lot of work to do. Thank you very much for watching this video. The picture here in Ukraine is a bit dark at the moment, but one thing you can count on is that here at the Kyiv Independent, we will bring the reality from the ground to you as it is. For those who want to see another, more beautiful side of Ukraine, the Kyiv Independent's travel show Dare to Ukraine is releasing its next episode about the incredible and strong city of Kharkiv, coming out on November 9. To make sure you don't miss it, please subscribe to our YouTube channel.